Religion and science, and Karma and Dharma. Karma and Dharma. Karma and Dharma is basically cause and effect. It's very scientific, but its deep, profound understandings have their foundation in metaphysical reality. And this is one of the most biggest foundations of knowledge within the religions of India, Tibet, Nepal, Buddhism, Japan, the Zen, and Tibet, the Chen, and the Buddhist within Sikhism, within Hinduism. Basically the whole branch of Indianism is Brahmanism. If we look at the word religion, it simply means to reconnect to the divine, because we are disconnected from the divine. In the Gnostic Gospels, and I will go into Gnosticism, the Gnostics are profound. A lot of things within Gnosticism I actually agree with. It was knowledge that was taken away from Christianity, because elements of Judaism as well are very similar to Indianism, and in fact the heritage of Christianity is deep-rooted within the knowledge trees of India. And this is the whole thing behind the tree of knowledge. We see the serpent going around the tree, or we see a man which has been turned into a serpent winding around the tree, like the snake going around the actual sword, indicating that there has to be a materialistic disinformation or deception on the sword. The sword is the knowledge. Also, we see that in pharmacy and drugs, DNA, because we've come into this existence to suffer. The actual precursor or effect of us living unrighteous lives, a life that is not righteous, has caused us to come into this existence where all of these bad things are happening. So even all of these people who are in politics, who are evil, who are demonic, they've served their own karma to come here, which doesn't really indicate that this is a very, very good planet, especially if you look at the references of a war on the mind and prison planet, and how it is a planet of the mind. So we need to reconnect back to that divinity. Now the Gnostic knowledge itself indicates, and again within Indianism, that a true life is to actually live Dharma, live in Dharma, and Dharma is to actually undo the bad deeds by doing good deeds, to wash away the bad deeds. Like one of the sayings is that hard work makes you lucky, and people refer to in superstition what good luck is and what bad luck is, and all of this superstition and things like that, whatever you put your belief into it, it becomes true. So Karma and Dharma is the divine justice. It's the perfect laws of the universe. And one of the actual things that was added to Christianity, one of the things that was added was forgiveness, which personally is something that I don't believe in, because if I want to forgive somebody, then there's going to be a good reason to do that. But that forgiveness is not up to me. There is a divine creative law, and even though I forgive somebody for what someone may have done or what I may have done, that's not going to change the divine justice, the divine law. Within Sikhism, there's a very strong foundation of discussing the principles of Karma and Dharma, and Guru Nanak did this very eloquently in terms of thought. He said, wherever we put our thought, we transmigrate to. Some of the final thoughts that you may have before death may determine where the transmigration may be. And somebody was, one of the Hindu ritualistic traditions is to remember the ancestors and to light incense and do like a ritualistic prayer of the forefathers and the ancestors with a photo of that person, and asking that person to bring the family good luck. So again, invested in almost some of the more ritualistic traditions, which is what became paganism. And I'll cover Gnosticism and paganism in another section. But to basically keep on to this point, the person invited Guru Nanak to their house for dinner, and Guru Nanak noticed that before the dinner this person performed a ritual. One of the things within Hindu tradition, and a lot of Sikh people still do this, is to actually give food to others in remembrance of an elderly person that may have passed. And they actually believe that by feeding that person they may quench the hunger or the thirst of a relative that's passed on. And Guru Nanak then sat there and had his food, reading the mind of the person, and said, you prepared me this lunch, and thanks for the kindness, and I will bless you for this, but in actual fact you're thinking of your father, that he's watching over you. Do you want me to go and show you where your father is? And the person finished the lunch with Guru Nanak and quite astonished, and Guru Nanak walked into the trees and the actual into the forest, and there was a tiger in the jungle, and the tiger had just hunted an animal and was eating the flesh. And Guru Nanak said, that's your father, he's reincarnated into that tiger, that's him. And the person couldn't believe this. Guru Nanak said one of the final things that your father thought of before he died was the taste of meat. Because he consumed the flesh of animals, he has now become a tiger, and there he is consuming the flesh of an animal. And the person was quite skeptical, and Guru Nanak walked up to the tiger, and the tiger almost fell into a trance, didn't attack Guru Nanak. And Guru Nanak spoke to the tiger and used the name of the person, the name of the father who'd invited Guru Nanak as a guest, and said some words basically, and the tiger dropped dead and died. And then Guru Nanak said, now your father's transmigrated to a better existence. There are many stories like this within Indianism, and many practices where people, and even a lot of yogic exercises have been under attack by the Christian faith. The Christians basically have attacked Indianism because extreme Christians believe that only their truth is the truth, and only Jesus was the actual the saviour. Well, Jesus was actually a martyr, like within the Sikh traditions, but he was also a yogi in my belief, in my understanding of who Jesus was. He was a yogi. He himself practiced yogic traditions, and this is why the Gnostics, the actual knowledge was taken away, because the Eastern Indian knowledge indicates that we all have the ability to ascend into a higher awareness and higher consciousness. And again, like, forgiveness is something that is for the Supreme Creator that we are all part of. So that knowledge itself within Indianism is profound, and it also has its roots in Christianity. And a lot of this is also explained in the Torah and the Kabbalah of Judaism. So from karma comes dharma. From righteous actions, the actual right side of the brain itself develops, and it's the right side of the brain which is where the belief is, and the actual concept of accepting that there's something higher to this existence. So there are physiological changes as well. There's changes to the body, and there's changes to the psyche, and there's changes to the understanding and the mind. And in fact, humans used to have 12 senses. We now have 5 limited senses. We're living in 5 sense reality, and that again is being limited. Our sense of smell isn't very good. Our sense of hearing isn't very good. We had 12 senses. We were supreme human beings from the ages gone. And looking at material and entropy, everything that goes through entropy is on a degradation, a decline, and our children are going through that. When we talk about our ancestors who used to be more capable than us, our parents, our grandparents, how did they achieve this? Everything itself within the material existence and the actual global karma of the planet, how all of these wars and things are happening. Because you've got to understand, metaphysically, we have the stars within us, we have space within us, like a microcosm and macrocosm. If our cells are fighting, this is the cancer. There's as much atoms within the body as there is stars within our galaxy. So we are part of space. All of the planets themselves sing to a vibration and a rhythm. The heart itself has an electrical vibration. That's why people need a pacemaker. It's not just simply muscles that are moving, as traditional science and Western knowledge will tell you. There's prana in the air. There is electrical activity happening in the body. Life needs a beat. The planets need vibration. The planets actually sing. This is heavily explained within Gurubani, within the Sikh religion, and how the planets actually move because of the vibration, how they orbit because of the vibration. And even the statement, what goes around comes around, within karma indicates how the planets themselves actually orbit and move. When you have vibration in order, in synchronicity, that's how you have music. When we have order in our lives, when we have righteous living in our lives, then that's when we will have music in our life. To transcend the animalistic understanding, we have to control the usage of the 9 openings on the body. So control what you see with your eyes, control what you say about others, control what you listen to, and also control sexual desire, and even control eating. And that's a little bit like gluttony and arrogance, and within the 7 in the Gnostics, within the seven sins, and they make part of all of the other sins. Because we are the only animals that have the ability to use the word, to speak, that was given to us to have dialogue with God. Now, how many people listening to this that understand what I'm saying have an open dialogue with the Creator? Because that is very real. The divine cosmos is very real. An intelligent Creator is very real. Karmic laws are very real. We all know that we have the instinct that this happened to us because we did this. If karma is very real, then forgiveness was added into the Bible deliberately, because the demons that are controlling this planet want to be forgiven. In fact, a lot of people that do things wrong don't have an acceptance. It's all about motive and acceptance. If you can accept that you will be punished for things that you do wrong, then you can never get to a demonic phase. There are those that believe by pushing suffering onto the innocent, and this is why we see this in the world today, that's going to increase their own life force, because these people have ailments, these people have mental ailments, these people have physiological ailments, these people have health conditions, and the breakdown of the human body is all part of Karma and Dharma, which has been explained again within nature, within the fact that the universe and the earth is living. So we have to have that dialogue with the Creator. One of the reasons why the left hand or the evil hand is doing what it's doing today is because it understands the fundamental principles of the divine laws of the cosmos to in fact use that against you. So a lot of times people will do something and they will get somebody to accept it themselves, to actually take that poisonous apple. You know, within Disney it's been symbolized that there's a red apple that's got poison in it, and if you're tempted by the greed of that red shiny apple and you take it, consuming that is going to poison you. So it's all out in plain sight. There is even things within Indian culture, Indian people, that even when a baby is born, they understand the esoteric laws, that the first person who feeds the child, the baby will take on the personality of that person who is feeding the milk, and usually it's the mother with the breast milk. So these people want to do that to control the destiny of that child. If that child has come to do good, there are evil people that don't want that to take place. There are very fundamental esoteric laws where information is passed on through food. Those children who have been fed well by their mothers and have been raised in a environment with both parents, mother and father, they are usually the ones that can go into society and do things for good. And broken families have children that sometimes from their suffering they can become better people and help people like themselves, but in some cases that doesn't happen. So the negative hand, the evil hand, uses this knowledge against you, this occult knowledge. So it's very imperative to understand and look at religions, to take note of what it is that those religions are actually saying, because all of this wasn't made up without any rhyme or reason. There is profound truth to what all of these religions are saying, especially when they talk about the ego. In Gurbani is a phrase which is profound, and another one is Jab main hu tab tu nahi. That basically means until I'm here, I can never find you. And that's referring to the ego. That's a dialogue that somebody is having with their own ego. Until I'm here, I can never find you. Everything in existence is God. If there was no Supreme Creator God controlling Karma and Dharma, then this simply wouldn't exist. Within Karma and Dharma, it's explained within Indianism, and even in Vedanta, it was predicted several thousand years ago what will be happening in the world today very accurately. If we look at the cosmos as a living being, as I've said before, that we are pretty much atoms and molecules for the planet. We are like the antibodies of the planet to make the earth healthy. Well, then you've got to think that the earth itself is in a sick state, because the planet is, the cancer that's within us. We pretty much are like the virus on the planet, and this is why you have that, shown in the cause and the effect of the actual weather, how we affect the weather and how the weather affects us. In Indianism, we are in an age of darkness, which is Kali Yuga. So it's a jug, basically. There's four. There's the golden age, There's Satyajug, there's Treta, there's Dwapar, and then there's Kaljug. And basically in them 4 yugas we go through different phases of the mind itself. If we had all 12 senses as supreme human beings, which is what we were, then these 5 ailments described in Sikhism of basically Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Hankar, which is basically desire, anger, greed, attachment and ego, would be beneath us, would be non-existent, because these are animalistic metaphysical thieves that are in the mind. Well, we have to understand that as higher conscious beings we are not animals, and this is the whole thing in Karma and Dharma, and transcending those 5 things tie us down more to an animalistic reality. We are the only animals on the planet that have the ability to speak, to use the word, to actually use our mouth and tongue, and this is why the word is very important in religion. We can't change our karma, but we can put things into sacrifice. We have to sacrifice our desires, our anger, our ego, our attachment, our greed. And this is one of the reasons why Jesus was the sacrifice to reconnect. The word religion means to reconnect people back to the divine. He had to sacrifice himself. Now we see when this knowledge changed after the Gnostics, when it was taken away, we see that people started to perform rituals and sacrifice things like goats, and sacrifice animals, and even sacrifice people. We see this in tribal traditions. If we look at the Mayans and people like that, they used to perform ritualistic sacrifices. And even the actual dark people, the demons that control this planet, because their own karma has been to push this planet into a demonic age, into a further dark age than where it is. They have been committing actions of evil, and there is evil. One of the things within Sikhism is we don't accept that there is a single entity, a single being of the devil as evil, but that evil is a very real thing. It's evil when you enjoy doing bad. Everybody has committed sins, but it's evil when you enjoy it, and that this is when you become disfigured. This is when you have physiological changes. So this is just one simple aspect of Karma and Dharma. The act of sin. Basically, within the teachings of religions, it's been made very clear what sin is. And I was having an interesting conversation yesterday about Christianity. But we can take it a couple of steps further back and look at ancient civilizations, which was very much, the religion was astrology and mysticism and the schools of mystery. Moses himself was from a mystery school. Looking further back, in ancient times, perhaps 20 or 30,000 years ago, maybe more, the systems and leaders of the spiritual race, which was very tribal, were actually female. So if we look at the female today in a matriarchal system, where we're dominated by the masculine, by men, we can very clearly conclude that the female today is pretty much a sex symbol, an object of desire. And many women have led men to God closer, but the female itself, the feminine in terms of the earth as well, the energy of the earth, the female today itself is lost. That's one of the reasons why a lot of women in today's world have insecurities and they don't know their place in the world. Now, sin itself, if we look at lust and desire, one of the things that happens to spiritual men from a physiological perspective is they're actually drawn further to the female energy, and the way they associate that connection is through desire or lust. Now, that itself has obviously, implications of karma, because one must control desire in the thinking, in the mind. If one doesn't do that, then on a scientific perspective, the results are very clear that there's physiological changes. The more a person desires, the more they fall into that cycle, growing weaker. So the masculine today, the man today, is actually very weak, and that's why Professor Tolkien, when he put together the Lord of the Rings, one of the things that he symbolized was other beings on Earth sharing the Earth realm with man. And as the Earth was going towards a male-dominated system, he said, it was actually the elf princess played by Kate Blanchett in the beginning when she prophesied that man is weak. So if we look within Indianism and the goddesses and the Shakti, basically the feminine, divine feminine energy, it's far superior than the masculine, than the male, as the creative force. And we could look at, obviously, material realm and the serpent and Kundalini and why that's symbolized as a snake. Basically that root energy, which is a sexual energy, if we look at Tantra and Karma Sutra and everything like that. And this is also one of the reasons why when this ancient knowledge was coming into Europe and the Western world a few hundred years ago, they associated the spiritual force with rituals of sex, and basically indicated that the gods, who were actually not gods but dark angels or negative forces upon the material world, which we have very much today, were basically there to receive this energy. Now, this is where vampirism and a lot of people today who are their soul frequency or their energy is very bright, feel weight on the shoulders, feel drained, feel weak, especially in the morning when they've woke up out of bed. This is one of the reasons, because upon this earth there is we're in a constant war or battle, dark against light, and sin itself is something which comes through the dark or the negative. To repel that, we must have a positive balance, but also it's metaphysical, it's within the mind. Now, there's lots of other elements that people can actually go about and do things and not know what they're doing is wrong. And this was very clear in Christianity when Jesus said that people don't know what they're doing, and that's why man needs a Messiah. In India, man needed the Guru, the teacher. And that's why there have always been those figures to teach people that too much of anything is bad. If we look at greed, it has attached to it so many other things, like jealousy, which is one of the biggest reasons today that so many people are in suffering, is because of hate and jealousy. That wouldn't come about if it wasn't for some type of materialistic attachment or greed. Now, in the Indian understanding of doing things wrong, as in sin, there's two perspectives. One where we can do things wrong because we are not aware of what we are doing, and that doesn't carry the same karmic weight as those things that we do wrong where we are fully aware of what we are doing from habit, as creatures of habit, as human beings. The messengers of God understood this, understood the human psyche, understood the way the human mind works. One story from India, and it goes back to the rituals in Hinduism, which is ancient knowledge of astrology, the sun representing gold and the moon representing silver, which is why the moon is referred to, associated to silver. If we look at stories of werewolves and vampires and all of that type of thing, which are very actually real, by the way. But if we go back to the traditions of the Hindu people, which were common people that produced rice, and in their village, in the times of October and November, they would throw water to the moon from the river to basically quench the thirst of the moon, symbolizing the moon as a being. And obviously the moon is symbolic to the feminine, to the female, which is a separate area altogether. But keeping on this point, Guru Nanak witnessed them and then went across to where they were and bended to the river and started throwing water to the opposite direction. And the people of the village started to laugh, basically said, "What are you doing?" And Guru Nanak replied that I'm sending my crops, my farm, water. And the people responded and said, "But your farm is a few miles from here. How is the water going to reach?" Guru Nanak responded with the accurate distance of Earth to the moon and said, "How will your water reach the moon? What you are performing is something that other people have done, and without really thinking about it, you're just carrying on the same process. This is what a ritual is." And he explained what the moon was in detail, and some people didn't believe him. So Guru Nanak actually took one of the people by the arm and transcendentally took him out of body, including himself, and they observed the moon instantly. Guru Nanak transcended from Earth to the moon and then brought the person back into body, who was actually astonished at what he witnessed. Now, if we lead lots of people into ignorance by carrying out rituals, that also has cause and effect. It has karma. Karma is not only what sins and burden you put yourself through, but most importantly is the impact it has on others. And if we look at ego, which is referred to as Shaitan, as the devil, Satan, in religions, because the ego deepens through cycles of reincarnation, this is where the destruction becomes apparent. This is where the force of destruction is. This is where the force of hate and evil transpires. If we look at the story of David and Goliath, David represents an individual who is seeking perfection, even though, and we see this story in The Lord of the Rings, where it's a small hobbit that can carry the burden of evil. And basically the way that works is that because David is representing somebody striving for perfection and going within, he defeats the ego, the giant, which is Goliath, and he defeats him by throwing a rock into his forehead between the eyes, which represents the pineal gland, the force of creation, the force of creative thinking. Why do you think Einstein, who fully researched Indian mysteries and Indian knowledge, that was one of his jobs, he was actually tasked by the military industrial complex, or the people invested in technological advancement and knowledge from a scientific perspective, and science itself under the umbrella of dark science or advanced high dimensional science, which is where nuclear power comes from, which is where rocket technology comes from. Do you think the ancient people of India didn't have rocket technology? It's been conclusively found that they did. They had rocket technology, they were on the moon, they were on other planets, they had nuclear wars. In fact, 6,000 years ago in India they've analysed the rocks, and there's an indication before the Krishna beings left India, which is a story that's explained deeply within the Mahabharata, that there was a nuclear war. But Einstein himself, one of his famous quotes is, imagination is more important than knowledge, because imagination is actually the ability to see into the future, and that's where the knowledge of inventions and creation is. If we look at remote viewing, clairvoyance and clairaudient, we are tapping into that construct of time and timelines and the natural progression of the cosmos within ourselves as individuals as well. That ability isn't given to evil people. That ability isn't given to egotistical people, egocentric people. Why do you think during dark projects, black projects and dark operations, the very scientists who were the pioneers in research as soon as they became aware of what the research was for, they pulled out, and then they were murdered to make it look like suicide. Well, if the masterminds behind that plan were so eccentric and so aware, why didn't they have the ability themselves to do what those great minds were doing? Because they clearly didn't. Through good deeds comes higher knowledge and awareness. The divine creative brain of the cosmos, of that construct, doesn't want the dark hand to be serving in creation. If we look at other sins that have been explained in religion, such as anger. Anger wears off on other people. It affects the mind of other people. What's wrong with that? Why is it a sin? Because if it amplifies and triggers off angry emotions within somebody, that's going to spread out like a ripple. That's going to cause further negativity. So the whole concept behind Karma and Dharma and sins is important criteria only because of the way the human psyche and the human mind operates, the human being itself, the way that machine operates. If we look at the body and the mind, so it's a sin because of the repercussions, because of the very effect that's going to come from that. If you're not fully consciously aware because you've had alcohol and you're happily in your home consuming alcohol, some people don't think that's a sin. Then you get into your car, you go for a drive and you end up killing somebody. This has happened. This is happening now. So we need government, we need law, we need rules, because people have lost their connection to the divine, which is religion. Religion means to reconnect to the divine, which is explained in Vedanta, how religion and politics goes together. And some people say that both things are of control. If you understand that, if you're at that level of understanding what control is and what slavery is, understand what the will is, that you have free will, and if you exercise free will in a righteous way, then you don't need government, you don't need religion even, you don't need that control. There's many people who deep down inside have got the acknowledgement that there's something greater, but they don't follow any particular religion. But that's okay because they have that awareness already. Why is sexual intercourse before marriage and with another person during marriage a sin? You have to consider that the act of intercourse and sex itself is considered something sacred, the union between the masculine and the feminine. It's a gift given to us to produce, to procreate. And if that is abused out of marriage or before marriage, because in terms of marriage we are asking to be blessed. This is why all the religions have a religious ceremony, but we are asking for blessing from the Creator, that everything in terms of the marriage works. This is why we see today that so many marriages are not working in all cultures and all people, because there's no compromise. Love is something that you have to make happen. But for creation, it's a gift given to us. Not everybody can have children, the same as not everybody can see, not everybody can walk, not everybody can talk. We take these things for granted until we no longer have that ability. In fact, I was speaking to a friend, and somebody they know practices in hypnotherapy, and there was a woman that couldn't have any children, and all of the different options available had been given to her, but there was just some anxiety there. There was something there that they tried to have children and she couldn't get pregnant, so she was hypnotized and taken back into a previous lifetime through regression, where she had suffered a tragic miscarriage of a baby boy. I think it was their second or third child in that lifetime, and she suffered from severe depression after the loss. It was a premature birth. The regression gave that woman therapy during the hypnosis sessions and put her at peace, mental peace, within that lifetime, which was still resonating in certain parts of her mental mind, the mind itself, the actual genetic memory, because we still don't understand human DNA. A lot of it we don't utilize. Different people do utilize different areas. Much of it is an antenna, but much of it is wisdom. I've mentioned before wisdom within genetic memory. For some scientific people listening to this, they will scratch their head and wonder what I'm talking about. I've also said things before to very eccentric, high up people in science about facial recognition, how there's a science where I personally can look at somebody's face, and from the face, the way the 12 points on the face are positioned, I can draw out a picture of their personality. The personality is in the face. If you find a face of 2 or 3 similar people, they will have similar personality. The personality is very specific to the person's soul group or the person's actual behaviour and who they are and what they do and what they know and what they think about others, what they think about themselves, what they think about God, how they react in certain situations. All of these little subtle things that people specialise in the science of people will understand. How we talk, how we walk, how we interact with others. Do we listen? Do we learn by watching? Do we learn kinesthetically? All of these things are very accurate in terms of people's science. But this woman was cured within the regression, and 2 months later she fell pregnant and had a healthy child from several successful hours of hypnosis. There's several popular stories online on YouTube of reincarnation stories, past life, present life, even out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences, which I've personally had 3 or 4 out-of-body experiences. But if we go back to the act of using the psychic body or the vessel, which again belongs not to ourselves but to the person who put the 5 elements in place, if we misuse that, then it's classed as a sin and it will have its karmic burden. It will have repercussions. So abuse of these things will affect us. Again, as children conceived through lust and desire, them children can sometimes cause chaos and destruction, be very destructive in people's families. A child conceived through love is very different. So that metaphysical fingerprint from the initial act is always there. As I mentioned before, everything has a residue. We leave behind a residue. This is why through trauma, through murders, through suicide, there's hauntings. There's a residual energy of those entities. They are locked into that time and space of when these acts are carried out. Something that I perceive and a lot of people are seeing on the planet today is when a child reaches a teenager and the chemistry changes and the body changes through puberty, and people listen to music and there's all types of symbolism and occult sex in music and also movies. This itself magnetizes negative energy to people, around people, in their homes, because that Shakti force, or force of Kundalini, which is the serpent of creation, is something that dark entities feed off. Bad karma, problems, bad luck. I've seen this around certain people, and I can presume that it's due to people not controlling the 9 openings on their body, the genitals, their eyes, the mouth. So in terms of esoteric science, it's very real that modern science will not tell you, that modern science will not explain this. So bearing in mind things that people do from awareness and actions that people do without the awareness, then we have to ask ourselves, in terms of Karma and Dharma and cause and effect, how does faith affect the psyche? How does constantly being going into that hole of negativity and get your fingers burned, how does that affect us? I would say most people on the planet today, deep down inside their mind and hearts, are becoming more aware that there is something more to this existence. There's a very profound phrase, metaphor, within the Gurbani, within Sikhism, basically means that I found the secret box that my grandfather was keeping. And this is a little bit like Pandora's box, the element of when all of this knowledge just comes out of Pandora's box, when all of these hidden secrets just come out at you, and it changes your perception of reality. It's a game changer. The knowledge is so profound that it changes where you are in the position of your life and reality. How does faith, belief, trust, listening, learning, patience, peace, harmony, compassion, being humble, being honest, being considerate, being conscientious of other people, if that becomes apparent, then we become gold. The body itself becomes gold. And then the gall, the darkness, can't affect us. People who listen to others and trust others and have faith and have hope and have an awareness that there is something greater, doesn't that bring any peace to the mind? If you know that something is looking after everything, it will, if your own intentions are good. Those who are manipulators, egotistical, narcissists, it doesn't bring peace to them, because they like to think and believe that they are in control. Somebody who is good of heart and intentions will often believe and listen to others because they are honest themselves. The universe itself is just. The universe itself being divine. We have to live with justice. We have to live with morality. And doing these things from a perspective of Indianism and Sikhism and all faiths, just following any faith, will bring that into your mind. If it's within the inner world, it will change your outer world. Why a monotheistic God? In terms of human thinking and the way the human brain and mind operates, and theism and atheism, looking at Hindu as polytheistic and the other religions which are monotheistic, and the messengers of the monotheistic religions, by definition, had to put man's belief into a single creator God. That itself was something that dissolved a lot of conflict. Further reasons for creating divisions and conflict, which is something that the religions have done. Now, in terms of a heaven and hell, my understanding and belief is that there's planets that are heavenly, hellish and earthly, but also the earthly planets can have a hellish existence as well as a heavenly existence, and each individual's inner world creates the outer world. So your perspective of the outer world is a reflection of what's happening within your inner world. Man and woman itself is simply a reflection or a projection of this creation and creator. I've been listening to Sam Harris recently, who's an atheist. He has some interesting definitions, and one of his biggest arguments is the Christian hell. Now, within Indianism, we don't believe that hell is a pit of fire, and if you believe in the wrong God, that you're simply going to go into that hell. That itself is dogma. It's part of the dogma. That is something that was added when the Bible was translated, or something that was changed for a very deceptive purpose to actually create a divide and conflict within the actual religion of Christianity, to weaken the whole concept of Judaism and Christianity. My belief is that Christianity, from the heritage of Judaism and looking at the Gnostics, is a much wider picture of what today's Christianity is. And one of the reasons why the ancient language, depending on the way it was spoken, had more than one meaning itself, is because there is a purpose behind that. Depending on what your mental development is, if you take it literally as per the words that you will hear or see, if you take that into a direction of not fully understanding it, then the greater good and the greater order is perfectly happy with that, is perfectly fine with that. As I've said before, not everybody has the wisdom to understand and see. Not everybody's third eye or pineal gland is active. It's only those that can read in between the lines that will understand this definition. And a lot of religion itself, the word itself is code. It's almost encoded. There is an encryption within the language. But hell itself is a catalyst of constant reincarnation, and the pain of birth and death through the cycle of reincarnation is itself symbolized within Indianism as being hell itself. We can have those things that we desire if we think of our property before we pass and die into the spirit world. Our soul will remain in that spirit world. One of the reasons why you have more hauntings within the United Kingdom in America is because those people are very materialistic. So the creative force that's encoded within everything says, well, if you want that, you can have it. If you think of your children, or if you think of family, then it's being put forward in stories within Indianism that you will become a pig and you'll have lots of children. If you won't think of meat, which is another materialistic thing, and it goes back down to control and the 9 openings on the body, the mouth, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the genitals, and the anus. If them animalistic openings aren't controlled, then you will remain within animalistic experience and existence. So hell itself is a constant catalyst, a cycle of events, that the force of motion, if you think of a gyroscope, that force of motion and acceleration of suffering actually increases. The psychic body, or the body, if we look at Brahma and the body that is being given to us, which is from the 5 elements in God, that body itself breaks down. So the concept of hell from an Indian perspective is a lot more broader than simply the 2-dimensional concept of hell being a pit of fire, and Muslims will go into the fire and all the Christians will be saved. And again, we're getting into things like Jehovah, and Yahweh and all of this. This itself is falsehood within the religion. if a lot of the deception and disinformation within religion was never created, then people would probably understand religion a lot better than they do. Because the way humans think is that if there's a queue, if there's 20 lanes, or there's 10 lanes, and whoever queues at that particular lane will get through into heaven, but then there's so many questions and different views, then people are going to be confused. And this was done deliberately when history was written, when the knowledge was changed. And this itself is one of the factors of the catalyst, the very catalyst of hell, because the further down in material existence that we go, as the machine age evolves within this time, then the more deceptions, the more confusion, and the more ignorance that is going to actually permeate, transpire within this actual existence. Now, science itself is an understanding of religion, because Tesla, Einstein, and others, even Stephen Hawking, have indicated that there is an understanding of trying to understand the greater good and God itself, and why there's a similarity between the word God and good. If there's evil, then there's good, and if there's good, then there's a higher order. There has to be a master. But science to me is religion. It's just a different perspective. Religion, the ancient religion, is the science. It's the higher dimensional science. It's the science of non-matter. It's a science of things that we don't understand. But what has happened is we have started to focus on the differences, and we have started to focus on the very egotistical side of things, and debates and arguments that who is right, was Jesus correct, was Muhammad correct, is Buddha correct, are the Sikhs correct, are the Hindus correct. All of this knowledge to me looks the same, it sounds the same. All music to me sounds the same, because the construct of that creates that, the very vibration that creates that, is the same thing. It's just going to come out in a different way or bounce off into a different direction. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, and this is why we have people who think a certain way and professors who think a different way. Now, I don't believe that what's indicated is God created the light and within 7 days the whole universe was created, because we used to think the earth was flat. We used to think that the whole solar system was the entire universe, and now we have started to understand that we potentially live within a multiverse, and there's parallel universes, and the things that make the very atoms and molecules is string theory, and we're going into subatomic particles and quarks and things on a very quantum level. So we're breaking down into something very finite and small, in the sense that we become giants. Now, I understand and appreciate that there's life that exists on other planets, and this is something that's understood within Indianism as well, within the great yogis, professors of India. A lot of people within India have actually even forgotten themselves, what the masters, what the knowledge of ancient India and within Vedanta was. But light, we think of light as good. If we look at physics may not accept, a physicist may not accept the actual existence of a God, because light itself is electromagnetic radiation. But that light itself, under observation, is very much alive, is conscious, is intelligent. So we have to then look at the possibility of what makes that light intelligent, what makes that light conscious, what makes things very... the very nature of everything is to live and thrive. The actual universe itself is like the sea, and it's called, an ocean, the worldly ocean. So the actual space, the very substance of space-time and space itself is like the sea. There is conscious energy within space that just simply looks like jellyfish. It looks like creatures that you will find in the sea. So it doesn't have a body, it's not a craft, it's not a vessel, it's just conscious energy that floats around in space. And this has been observed by some of the secret footage that NASA released. So the whole concept of God is something that is intelligent, something that is all-knowing, but something that pervades, that actually is within everything, is the construct that makes everything what it is. And in my understanding, definition is that there would be nothing without the existence of God, because every single thing is a miracle. If we, in 100 years' time, we will start to understand more than what we know today, that some of the very simple things that we have in life are a miracle. And in closing on this chapter, we have to understand that if we take all of these religions and look at them and take all the similarities and actually detach the ego and detach from an argument of a debate, an argument of finding the differences, then everything within existence, around us, within us, past, present and future, within our lives, not only within this solar system, but the other galaxies, stars and multiverses, that very being itself is the creator God.